Hey guys, my name is Taylor Brower and I am here with a review of this guy. This is the iPhone 11 Pro Max. Let's check it out. So let's start off this review by talking about the camera. Apple really wants us to get excited about this camera, and that's pretty much apparent in everything from the keynote that was presented in September to the website to the phone itself, because this is a drastic departure from what is typical of Apple when it comes to cameras. We have never seen something like this on an iPhone. Does it live up to Apple's hype? I think it does. There are 3 lenses on this device. One is a ultra wide angle, the second is a zoom, and the third is a telephoto. The ultra wide has an equivalent of an f2.4 and it's a 13mm lens. The ultra wide doesn't support night mode and it doesn't have Apple's phase detection system like in the other 2 lenses, but it takes really wide photos. In broad daylight, they look really awesome. Next up is the wide, which is considered the middle ground, the regular camera. This features an f-stop of 1.8 and it's a 26mm lens, and it does support the night mode, and it has the phase detect auto system, which the phase detect auto system is in comparison to a contrast based autofocus system. And basically the phase detect auto system, an algorithm will read the distance that's in the picture, it will analyze it, and then it will calculate the focus points based on that algorithm. And when done correctly, when calibrated correctly, this results in really fast autofocus. And this autofocus system we've seen in many of the Sony cameras. The Sony cameras use a phase detection auto system, and they are one of the best autofocusing cameras on the market. So it's a pretty big deal that focusing system is in these phones now. The telephoto lens has an f-stop of 2.0 and it has the equivalent of a 52mm lens, and it has the same phase detect auto focus system, and it also has optical image stabilization along with the wide 26mm lens. Both have optical image stabilization, so you're going to be able to get very smooth pictures and videos with these lenses. And if we move on to the video of these lenses, this phone can shoot 1080p at 30, 60, 120, and 240 frames per second. It can also do 4K recording at 24, 30, and 60 frames per second. And the cool part is that the 4K can do 24 frames per second. It can't do 1080p in 24, so if you want those cinematic shots, you're going to be doing it in 4K. All of them feature high dynamic range. On the front of the device, we have the selfie camera, which also is 12 megapixels, and it has an f-stop of 2.2, and it's a 23mm lens. And its main feature is really the slow motion selfie videos. The capabilities of the front-facing camera are that it can shoot in 4K, 24, 30, and 60. And in 1080, it can shoot in 30, 60, or 120 frames per second. It is also has electronic image stabilization. So it's not optical image stabilized, it's electronic with a gyro. So moving on to build quality of this device, I gotta say that Apple really hit it out of the park with the build quality. Now, this is the first iPhone that I've ever owned, and my previous phone was a Samsung Galaxy S8 Plus, and this just feels so much more solid. The weight is a very nice weight. It's got a lot of heft to it. The feel in the hand it's a lot wider than the Samsung, and that feels nice because the Samsung was very tall and skinny. It was a little bit awkward to hold. It kind of felt like you were holding like a banana or something. Maybe not that extreme, but it was very skinny. This device feels way more proportionate in the hand, and it's not as tall. So it's still a big phone. Like, I really have to reach here with my thumb. This phone is actually probably a little too big for my hands for one-handed use, but it still feels really good and functional. All the buttons on the side are very clicky and punchy. The silence button on the side feels very solid. You click it and you get like a nice little haptic feedback. The ports on the back or I should say the bottom, are all very symmetrical and lined up. It looks very clean. All the bands around the edges are very symmetrical. The power button is bigger. It's a big power button compared to the Samsung, and I like that. You can easily hit it no matter if like your hands are up here, your thumb is down here. You are always going to be able to hit that power button. And then this is probably the most controversial build quality aspect of this, which is this camera right here. It's big, and in pictures, I gotta say it looks pretty ugly in pictures, but when you see it in person, the glass around the side here, like this glass square, it really kind of blends in with the back of the phone, and it looks really, really nice. It does not look it doesn't stand out as much in real life as it does in like pictures and videos. You really gotta see it in person to experience it. And then obviously they move the Apple logo down here. It's dead in the center, so that looks very nice and symmetrical. All around, I'm very impressed with the build quality of this device, and this is probably the most well-built phone in terms of form factor that I've ever experienced. So I'm very happy with that. Next up is the audio on this device. This is a very hard one to gauge in a review. So I'm just gonna tell you that the audio on this device is amazing compared to the Samsung Galaxy S8 Plus. Compared to any phone I have ever had, and I've had quite a bit of Samsung phones in the past, and this audio blows them all out of the water. This iPhone has stereo speakers, so there's one at the earpiece here, and then the other two are at the bottom. It has two bottom firing speakers and then the earpiece up here, and that makes for a very engaging and immersive sound. You feel like the sound, pointing the phone in front of you, it sounds like the sound is all around your face. It's just encompassing your entire face, and it's loud. It's very loud. I can't go really above halfway on any media because it's so loud. There's really no need to. And at full volume, you can have, like, if you're in a room, like the whole room is going to be able to hear the audio because it's so loud. It does feature Dolby Atmos, so there is that Dolby technology in here, and I'm very impressed with the audio on this device. Next up, we have the display of the iPhone, which is another thing that Apple is very proud of on this device. They even have a new name for this display, and it is called the Super Retina XDR. And on the iPhone 11 Max, which I have here, this display is 6.5 inches. It's an 83.7% screen to body ratio from top to bottom here. Features HDR10. It has a 120 hertz touch sensing, and it looks beautiful. It really looks nice. It's an OLED display, so you're gonna get those deep blacks that you get in OLEDs and the very white whites. This screen definitely accomplishes deep blacks and white whites. It looks very nice. In comparison to other phones that I've owned, this screen, it has a warmer tone to it. Apple has tuned this screen to be a little bit warmer than I'm used to. Most of the screens that I've used have more of a bluish tint. The warmer colors is going to make this look a little bit more yellow, So white text is going to be a little bit yellow. It's not going to be like that pure white that you would get with cooler color tones, which was something that I had to get used to. I honestly kind of prefer those cooler tones, but after a while you get used to it, and it just looks really nice. Also, another thing that I noticed is everything on the iPhone looks very crisp. The text looks very crisp. The pictures are super crisp, and it makes the screen feel higher resolution than it actually is. This phone actually has a lower resolution than my previous phone, which is the S8 Plus, but it doesn't feel like it. It feels like it's a higher resolution, and I think that's really incredible how well tuned Apple has made this display to give it sort of that effect. I think that's really impressive. So yeah, overall, I'm loving this display. Also, Apple claims that this display has the toughest glass in any smartphone to date, so it should be pretty durable and scratch resistant as well. We will see with time. The biggest hardware change in this phone is the battery of this device. Apple claims that it's 5 hours longer than the XS, and while I can't confirm that, from my experience, the battery life on this phone has been phenomenal. I've gone about a day and a half of pretty normal usage on this phone. I'd say actually a pretty above normal, because I've been testing out all the features of this device and using it constantly because it's a new device, and I've only had to charge it about 3 times in the course of 4 days. That's really good. And it's not even like the battery has gone completely down. It's like I get in my car and I connect it to Apple CarPlay and I drive around and it charges. It's never been like at night I plug it in and I'm waiting like while I sleep for it to charge. It's never been like that, because the phone is constantly at a good percentage. Like I didn't charge at all last night, and I've been using this phone all day, and I'm at 36% battery life, and at night it was at 60%. So the battery is, I would say, the most incredible hardware change on this phone. The processor is really driving all the cameras on this phone, like the night mode, holding that aperture open for all the light to come in, the algorithm with the auto-focusing system, that is all being controlled by the A13 Bionic chip. What is the software experience like on this phone? Because as we know, a phone can have all the most amazing hardware in the world, but if it doesn't have very good software, then it's going to be clunky to navigate. It's not going to be a good user experience, and the hardware is pretty much going to go to waste because you don't have the software experience to complement the hardware. The software in this phone that I've experienced has been really great. This phone came with iOS 13. I recently updated to 13.1 a couple days ago. So the majority of my time with this phone has been on iOS 13. And from that side of things, it was immediately a good experience. I'm not too familiar with the Apple ecosystem since this is my first smartphone by Apple, and the experience has just been way better, in my opinion, than the Android experience. Even though I'm giving up things like all the customizability within the apps, within the operating system, having the custom launchers, that stuff is really nice to have, but the software experience on this phone has just been so comprehensive, and it feels complete, and like they thought of like every little detail, just to make it a little bit more enjoyable. Like for instance, the calendar app goes through my inbox and sees whenever I have movie tickets or events that are planned, and it will ask me, do I want to add them to my calendar? And if I confirm it, it adds it to the calendar, and I don't have to worry about it. And also things like setting alarms. The iPhone asks me like when my typical time that I go to bed at night and when I wake up, and it has automatically set alarms around those times. I don't even have to think about it. It's little things like that I think make the difference, and it feels like the phone is working for me rather than I'm, having to make all these customizations in the phone to like really tailor it to how I want it, get it working the way I want it to work. The iPhone feels like it's trying to work for me, which is really weird and nice. One of the big features with iOS 13.1 is, of course, the shortcuts, and specifically the automation. Now, I've heard that the shortcuts were implemented in iOS 12, and it seems like the automations came out in iOS 13.1, and I think this is an incredible system that the iPhone has, being able to essentially create triggers for things like sending text messages, creating alarms, sleeping alarms, opening up certain applications at certain times or based on certain calls. You can really, really get creative with what you want this phone to do. And I have not seen anything like that for Android. I'm sure maybe there's a third-party app out there for Android somewhere that does that kind of thing, but this is built in to the iPhone. The gesture controls on the iPhone are kind of weird at first, admittedly, but you do get used to them, and after you get used to them, it's really fast and intuitive. So in closing, would I recommend this phone for people to buy? And I have to say it depends. This is a really, really good phone. I think despite the high price of this phone, the value is pretty up there. You're getting a lot for this phone. You're getting an excellent camera system. You're getting the top specs from Apple that enable the phone to do a lot of really cool things and save on a lot of battery life. You're getting a bigger battery in this device, which is gonna make it last a very long time, as we've seen. The display is nice. I wouldn't say it's a main selling point, because I don't think there's a really big difference between the OLED display in this and the LCD in the iPhone 11. But really, you're gonna have to do a comparison in person on this phone to really experience that. The audio is amazing on this phone. It is really, really good. The best audio I've heard in a smartphone. And the Apple software is really great. And of course, it makes it harder because if you're coming from another Apple device, you're already used to that experience. So you're really getting the same experience on this phone because Apple's really good with updates. So I think it's more compelling for an Android user to get this phone. I think you're getting a lot more with this phone coming from Android than you are from coming from another iPhone. And I would say wait till the next iPhone if you're upgrading from a iPhone 10 or higher. If you're upgrading from a 6 or 7 or 8, I definitely recommend this iPhone. Or if you want to wait for 2020 iPhone, that would be an even better upgrade. So those are my thoughts on this phone. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe, and feel free to leave comments about feedback on this video, anything you would like me to make a topic on this phone. I plan on doing more videos on this device, like comparing it with my old Samsung Galaxy phone and maybe diving into more of the automation features and camera features. So feel free to leave your feedback below, and thank you for watching. Something changed. A little bit of the software and a little bit of the hardware. Nova.